Hello, friends. So happy to be with you again. Thanks for being here with us live or on the replay. I'm Rachel Archelaus, founder of the Intuitive Art Academy. We have Carrie Roldan with us, your business BFF. And today is right up my alley. I am so excited about this. Have you ever wanted to be psychic? Because you can be, because spoiler alert, everyone is already. So I'm just going to help you reconnect today a little bit, find that place inside of your heart that always has been psychic, and we'll answer your questions. So if you have any questions about specific abilities or you want to share your journey, go for it. I would love to hear from you. And I actually really want to hear from Carrie too, because I know she went on a journey of like, no, I'm not intuitive, to like, oh, hell yeah, like I'm really good at this. So, and she's had some incredible premonitions or knowings, and maybe she will want to share some. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying that, I'm like, "Yeah, I have," but, um okay, where do I start? So, when I was younger, I was told that, like, psychics were crap, right? Psychics were swindlers, and so I just thought that was, like, something that people weren't actually, right? And yet, I always had a fascination with with that. And I was always intuitive. I always did have knowings. I didn't have the vocabulary for um to like know why I knew things, but I just knew. So what people would call like a high um emotional intelligence. And so, I went through my life and I became a high school cross country and track coach. And I recognized that in that realm, even though I was very young, um, and relatively inexperienced, like, I just knew. I just had knowings, and I trusted myself a lot with, like, why I decided to do stuff. And I think I trusted myself because I thought, probably out of arrogance, actually, but, like, I recognize now, like, "Oh, I just had intuitive knowings." So, fast forward a few years and I find the realm of life coaching. And I recognize, oh, that's what I've always been doing, right? I've always been someone who people sought out for advice. And I always wondered why that was. um, but regardless, it was because I had this sense, right? I was able to hear what people weren't saying. I was able to gather what they weren't telling me. And I would be able to reflect back to them what like they needed to hear, I guess. So I became a life coach and I really wanted to figure out how to do this thing online. And in the process of that, I wound up connecting with a bunch of people, Rachel, one of them, who were also in the coaching space, but specifically in the like psychic development space, in the I am a psychic and I help people with this, that, and the other. And by then, I was sort of over, or I knew these people. I was sort of over the idea that psychics were crap, right? And I was more just like intrigued and fascinated. Like I wanted to I mean, I was a little afraid. You guys have heard my story, like my first interaction with Rachel. I was afraid that she could like see right through me, that she could peer into my soul, which she can. But I was a little uncomfortable, but I was also fascinated. And I wanted people to like, oh, and I'd been like an avid Oprah watcher. And Oprah had had a few different like psychics on or like people making predictions. And I think someone had once predicted to Oprah that she would become Oprah. And so I wanted Rachel to predict that for me. And so, anyways, I wound up being connected with all these incredible, intelligent, um, amazing, wise, and flawed individuals who had psychic abilities. And I worked with a couple different psychics, or like in people who called themselves maybe like intuitive healers. I wound up like everywhere I turned, I was connected with someone who was psychic. And I really, really, really wanted to be psychic, but I felt like they had this like superpower that I just wasn't gifted with. And then they started telling me that I was. And I started believing that I was. And I took one of Rachel's psychic development courses. We have a friend, Roseanne. I took one of hers. And yeah, it turns out, right? It's like Dorothy and there's no place like home. She's clicking her heels together. And they're like, turns out, you had the power within you all along, or whatever it is that the good witch says. And I just learned to have more confidence. And that's all it really was recognizing, learning how to trust myself, learning that my knowings don't come from nowhere. And that's it. And then I wound up building a business, right, on being intuitive, right? People were hiring me because I was intuitive, because I seemed to know things. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did I
Really
leave anything
amazing.
out? Is there something you wished I would have said?
No, that was perfect. Like Jana saying she can relate to you so much. Gina Maria saying we're everywhere. I was just, what popped into my head earlier was like how you knew about your neighbor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this will make me cry. So you guys, my next door neighbor, I remember, so he was like the best. We really loved our old next door neighbors. And they had become a little bit like, my parents are not far away, but they were like surrogate grandparents to my children. My kids played over at their house like every day. The year we moved in, Richard, the man that I'm going to tell you about, he had just retired. So, and Kathy, his wife, she had spent most of her life like sort of doing home daycare. And so they just like instantly welcomed my kids, and it was the best because lots of times I was like, please go away. And they were the best. And they also were just amazing, like pseudo parents to my husband and I, as we were like this young couple. And Richard had every tool on the planet and knew how to fix stuff. And like, it's just awesome. So years go by, and I did have the feeling, and Richard and Kathy is still alive and kicking. Richard and Kathy kind of took care of us, right? Like I knew, like, well, Richard and Kathy will take care of us. Richard and Kathy will know what to do. And there was a time when I started to have a knowing, like, oh, we're like grown-ups now, and they're getting older, and we're gonna have to start taking care of them. And there was this little like selfishness in me that was like, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to. Like, but anyways, one day I was in my house and I heard the sound of the trash cans, which meant Richard was taking the trash out. And I watched him take the trash out, and it was like, people say I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice, it was my own voice in my head. But it was a knowing that said, you're going to need to take care of Kathy. And I remember getting a pang of fear that was like, oh my God, Richard's going to die. And then I immediately judged myself for having that feeling. And also, those of you who are like law of attraction people, like early in that journey, you're sort of afraid of like every negative thought, like, oh shit, did I just create that? And so I had that feeling. And then it passed and I went on with my life. And 24 hours later, Richard died. So less than 24 hours later, probably Richard died. And we were there to take care of Kathy. We were there like to hold her in the moment, to pray with her when they were like working on him. And so that was like terrifying. It was a moment where I wished I hadn't, I wished I hadn't have known that. Or I wish I would have done something differently, run to warn him, something. So that was actually a moment where it wasn't like super comforting because I didn't recognize it until after the fact. How about you?
Well, I just want to say about that. So I've been psychic and all of these things my entire life. And I didn't grow up with any validation for it or anything until I was like maybe 14 or 15. And I just didn't think my family was, blessed like me, whatever you want to call it. Um, until my dad's mom told me that she was always able to tell when and how someone was going to die. And so that was like her only experience with being psychic. And so she eventually just completely swore it off, entirely. And when I found out about this, I was like so excited because I was a young person. I was going through a lot. And I thought, here's someone I can talk to. Here's someone like this was not out and about back then. I mean, we had the internet, but it wasn't as populated as it is now. Um, there weren't shows about this kind of thing. Um, and so I had very little resources. And so I was so excited that my grandma was admitting to me that she was psychic. But she honestly did not want to talk about it. And I was so disappointed. But from how you're describing things, it's very emotional, very difficult, like not knowing when to intervene. And so I think what we can share here for all of you is that there are many ways to interact with the psychic world with our extra senses, and they're not all pleasant. They're not all cut and dry. They're not all easy. And they really challenge us because here we are, humans. We think the world works a certain way. We live, we die, that's it. Or if you're religious, you have some, thoughts on the afterlife. But when you are getting premonitions of someone's death, or when you're visited by someone who's died, you really change your tune about all of that. And your judgments about death really do get pulled because, of course, we're sad when people are gone. Like, we're not able to be with them in the same physical way as we were. I cry when my friends die just as much as everybody else. But we have a broader view of how the world could possibly work based on our personal experience. So I know for me, I couldn't imagine myself without this. And so that's why I'm always so excited to teach people how to do this. But I do understand, like, there's a lot of angles that you could come at it. And if you just grew up with a negative association with it, or if your family was bashing on psychic people, which is just, I'm really ready to change that narrative because, like, just imagine inserting some kind of like racial profile in that same thing. Like, we would not do that. That would be considered a very bad thing to say. But, throwing around psychics as, people who take advantage of others is perfectly acceptable in most society. So no more. We're all psychic. We're all energetic beings. We all have the ability to connect in ways that we choose to connect.
Yeah, and you know what? I was just talking I wasn't talking. I was listening to someone on uh YouTube, and he's actually like this massive skeptic, but for some reason I love him. I listen to everything he puts out. He's great. But he sort of is of this mind that like ghosts aren't real, psychics aren't real, like all this thing. But he was saying, he's like, every person I talk to, like, he's like, all sane people know that ghosts aren't real. All sane people know that psychics aren't real. But he's like, all the sane people I know who say that also say, but I have this one thing, or I have this, right? And that's the point. Like, it's just, it is real. I know, Rachel, you're in the dark right now. There you go. Um, and at least for me, it was real and it was there all the time. And for you, it's real and it's there all the time. And there's some things we can use to pull it out, And for Rachel, like, Rachel grew up. Did you grow up? You've told me the whole time I've known you, you've told me, like, I grew up openly psychic. But did you grow up knowing you were psychic? Or did you grow up just thinking everybody, like, there's a lot of things about me that I just thought everybody else was like that. And then I'm like, oh, turns out they're not.
Yeah, that's a great question because I didn't have the word psychic until I was like maybe 12 or 13.
Okay.
But I grew up seeing and talking to beings that weren't human and my relatives who had died. But like, So I knew other people didn't see that. I didn't talk about it. And I think I knew people didn't see it because I had an imaginary older brother named Matt, who I still talk to this day. And I used to bring him everywhere. You know, he'd come to the table and he'd eat with me, like classic story. A lot of kids have the invisible best friend. And I could tell my parents were just like humoring me. You know, like to me, Matt was absolutely real. We would talk about everything. He would swing on the swing set with me. And so I could tell they couldn't see him. Actually, I didn't see him ever either. Yeah, I know. It's so interesting when we talk about these extra senses and how we perceive different things. Like I have the ability to see a ghost, a spirit, another being in form, in color, that kind of thing. But Matt never appeared physical to me. I just always knew where he was. He was just a clear being. Isn't that interesting? I did paint him once, which was fun as a teenager. But
Well, so now my question is, and we should probably look at the chat and then get into what we need to talk about. But now my question about Matt is, was he actually an older brother?
yes, yeah. So Matt, first I called him my invisible older brother. And then in my teen years, I thought, well, late teens, I thought, oh, he must be my spirit guide, because that's what everyone was talking about, their spirit guides. And then I had a reading with Nora Harold in my mid-20s, and she called him my hybrid brother. And so that made sense to me. So he's a spirit guide and my actual hybrid brother. So,
but he's not a child that your parents had that passed.
No.
Just wondering. I've heard those stories too.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of actual like miscarriage babies and helped families like understand that they didn't do anything wrong and that the soul isn't lost somewhere and like everything's okay. That's been pretty amazing. And aborted fetuses, same. Yeah. So we could get into heavy stuff, but like, why don't we actually get into my first tip here? So, you want to see energy? So energy is the basis of all, right? We are energy, everything's energy, but there's also energy between all of us too, right? We're in this soup of energy. And so if you can look at the darkest thing you can find right now, I have a black rim around my monitor, and so I can see that right now. Sometimes if you look into a corner in the ceiling, that's a dark place. Any black you can find, look there and tell me, just kind of zone out and look at it, or zone out, look into the corner. Is it a flat color? Are you seeing detail? Or hopefully you're seeing a little bit of fuzz over it, a little bit gray, a little bit TV snow, if anyone is old enough to remember what that looks like. So that is the energy that's between all of us. And you can use this generic observation to build your skills to be able to see whatever you want to see. So see your spirit guide, see your aura, see energy vortexes if you live in an area like that, to see the energetic emanations around plants and trees, to go into an antique store and see all the energy in there, because all of our belongings absorb us. So there's just a lot you can do with that. And I do have a video on seeing your aura on this channel. I have a whole psychic development playlist. I'll link it down below.
Well, this is making me yawn already, but I remember when you taught me that, because I like so badly wanted to like see energy, or like, you know, people we could see things that weren't there, and I like wanted to know how to do that. And then when you taught me that, I was like, oh, like, oh, like it was like, oh, I totally see energy. Like it was, and I think that's the thing I'm talking about is like all of us are psychic. and all of us, I mean, I don't know if all the rest of you can see energy or have noticed the energy before, like the energy around plants and stuff, like all the time, right? But I just thought everyone could see that. Um, and I don't know, it was like super validating just to like go through that and have you, and same with teaching me how to see auras, which those are more difficult for me. Like I need to, it's not like I walk around noticing everybody's auras. Um,
Well,
that
let me just say that that's not my norm either, because you do have to focus specifically, usually. I mean, sometimes, sure, I'm like in an open state, but I prefer not to be that open when I'm just walking around in the world. And so I just want to make that normal. Like, you're not now all of a sudden just going to have this completely on all the time if you start practicing. You're probably going to have to be intentional about it, which I think is a good thing.
Well, I can tell you that that's what I thought was, maybe that's why, like in the beginning, like I thought if you're psychic, like you're always seeing and hearing all the things all the time. Like you're 100% on all the time. And so like going through this process with you and with Roseanne and with I had a friend Cynthia who also helped. It like helped me realize like, oh, there are little things that ever like seeing the energy, like noticing. And it would always be like, for me, it'd be like, are my eyes okay? Or, like something like that, where it's like, oh, this is something that can be nurtured and developed. And that was really cool.
But about being on all the time, like my visual senses aren't on all the time, but in any given moment, I am reacting with an extra amount of information, which I think is so cool. Like, so what is the benefit of being psychic in the everyday life of you? Like that email I wrote a couple days ago about playing rock, paper, scissors with Eric. I don't know if you. So we were just joking around that somebody needed to clean out the fridge. And I was like, I did it last time. And he was like, he did it last time. And so he proposed rock, paper, scissors. And so we did, 1, 2, 3. And I did paper and he did rock. And he immediately spun around and was like, never play rock, paper, scissors with a psychic. Like, obviously, I'm going to win, you know? And, and it just, that's my norm. Like if he buys me, I remember the first time he's a little skeptic, or was, but really one of the first times he absolutely couldn't deny the fact that I was psychic was we lived together in our first house in Southbury, Connecticut, and he bought me a Christmas present. I, had no part of that, didn't know. I don't even think it had arrived yet. No, it hadn't arrived yet. But I said, oh, you got me a Willy Wonka golden ticket? And I hadn't thought about it. It just came out of my mouth. And I didn't even know they sold things like that. I've never seen one. But he was like, damn it. Like he wasn't mad, but he was like surprised. That's exactly what he got me from some Etsy shop somewhere. Like I absolutely didn't know any of that existed. And that's the truth. It's like, you have access to all that is when you're connected. And so I can pull things out of my hat that I've never considered before, never seen, never experienced. And it happens every single day. And especially in my work with clients, because I can deliver to them what they're asking me for, even if I've never had personal experience with it. Or oftentimes I will have run into that information the day before, the morning before, just randomly. The universe like set me up with that just so that I could deliver it to them. So there are so many reasons why being connected to yourself, which is really all being psychic is so helpful to you, your clients, anybody that you interact with.
Rachel's waiting for me to say something. I have lots to say, but I think I just want to say that. Okay, no, I don't want to say that. What I want to say is that it helps me in my client work. It's helped me to relax in my client work, to know. I remember telling you, I just want to show up and be awesome. Like, that's all I want to do. And I felt some sense that, like, that wasn't enough. And what I've learned is, actually, if I can just show up and be connected,
Mhm.
it will be awesome. And that has really made, I think it's made the work that I do with people much more valuable than any sort of, like, um, promised result, because the results are always multidimensional. Like, the results are always so much better than they know that they're asking for to begin with, that I know what I'm promising on the um, outset. And yeah, it works out really, really well. So if you, even if you already working with, if you're already doing some sort of client work, um, or I'm thinking about, we have a friend who's an artist who's also very psychic, and like, just trusting herself with when she decides to sell her art and what she decides to paint. And oh, it's making me yawn. Living from a connected space always works out.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things to do is to introduce people to angels. Not that you all haven't already had lots of contact with them, but to me, they feel so strongly of unconditional love, like solid as a rock, unconditional love, that I find it to be extremely effective at relaxing, at helping self love work, and just like the feeling of being accepted unconditionally. And so when I used to teach these workshops, I taught a 6-week psychic development workshop in Connecticut many, many, many times for years. And our last class would be, I would invite my angel friends in, and they would stand in the middle of the room, and everyone would take a turn and walk through it. And they could feel and stand in the middle of those angels and feel the energy. And so you can do that at home, though, because everyone has access to angels. And by the way, I did go through a phase in my teen years where I thought angels were dumb and they were fake. So if any of you have that reaction, I understand. Um, Even though that's the first thing I ever remember seeing. But if you want to right now, you
Wait, I have
can.
a question, Rachel. How did you know that they were angels? Because I'll be honest, I have a reaction to angels. Like, I'm very open. I understand that, like, angelic energy exists, but I think, like many humans on the planet, I was fairly damaged by the well-meaning Christians around me growing up. And so I, like, have, like, a real association of angels with church.
Mm.
So can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the church co-opted a lot of things, right? And the story of creation, morality, like pretty much everything. They took it over, all the pagan holidays, they made their own. So even just from that, like we can assume angels had an origin other than the church. And I guess that's all I'll say about that, is that they live in their own realm. They are, I guess, they're in between us as like embodied pieces of all that is, and whatever they are. Like they're different. I mean, I'm not an angel expert, but from everything I can gather, they're not quite like us. Like I think Jim Self even would say, like, they're not creator beings. We're creator beings because we're actually part of the universe, but they're also part of the universe. So I'm sure lots of people have lots to say on angels. I just know from my personal experience that they're always around, they're always available, they're always, um, I mean, I hate to use the word fierce, but it's almost like the unicorns where they have this exacting boundary and they feel very dense. The more dense and compacted with that self love energy than I've ever felt from any other being. So that's why I like to work with them.
All right.
Okay, so if you want to participate in this, you can just ask one to come visit you. And if you have one in mind, if you work with archangels, you can ask one specifically, or you can just say, Okay, angel team, can you just please come and stand behind me? That could be really fun. So let's take a moment and do that. So angel team, or my favorite angel, or whatever you want, please come and stand behind me. And now you get to play. You get to move your arm back. So put your arm behind your head and see if you feel a difference. So move your arm in front of you, move your arm in back of you. I feel a difference in my hand. Subtle, very subtle. Difference in tingle, difference in temperature. Now you can ask your angel to maybe envelop you, to give you a hug. See if your body feels more relaxed. See if you feel different. Where do you go? Do you naturally lean back a little? Is your heart racing a little? You can say hello in your mind. See if that does anything. And now finally, if you want to, you can turn around or stand up and move where that angel is standing. I love the tears, by the way. That's a very common, if you're tearing up, that's a very common reaction. So you can turn around or stand up, or put more of you where you feel that angel is standing. And now finally, if you want to open your eyes, that angel is still there. Take a look at the spot. Just take a look. I see more snow. It's subtle, but more snow in the air, more pixels of gray moving around, more activity in that space. And if you want to move your hand through it, you might see some threads. Some threads. I see some trails of my hand. So this is something you can do anytime you want. And if you feel like you didn't really have a chance to relax enough into it to have an experience, try this on your own and do it at your own pace. I know we kind of rushed through it a little bit, but that's because we're on a live stream. But yeah, this is available to you anytime, and you can practice all of your extra senses. You know, you can practice saying hello and seeing if you get a feeling back, your sight, you know, touch, hearing, all that stuff. You can practice all the clairs if you want to. Yeah,
Ooh.
blue flashes of light, very common too. Nice.
Yeah, I was just about to say the chat. So you guys, if you don't know, yawning happens for me a lot. Tears as well. I was looking at Pink Dreams saying she's talked to angels on the street, in the hospital, in her room, and that they tend to appear to her when she's struggling and needs a nudge to keep moving forward. I have heard that about angels, that they will always appear when you ask for help, but that they will only intervene if it's like life and death, or if it's like not your path. Is that true? Oh, you're muted, Rachel.
I have heard that. I've also heard that about spirit guides. But that's on this planet too. And that's the idea that there's no assertion. Like they cannot undermine your free will. So law of the universe. So yeah, Gina Marie is saying she got a word that is very significant, proprioception. Yes. And I believe that is how you move, how your body moves, responds to things. I'm not exactly sure, but I've definitely been encountering that word a lot lately.
I've never heard that word in my entire life, but Gina Maria is saying that now that's what she needs to ask for at her next neuroacupuncture session. See, there you go.
Yeah.
Mm.
So let me ask you a question, Carrie.
All right.
And everyone, if I could show you one thing, like if there's any kind of psychic skill that you've ever wanted to learn, like what is your top one? Like what do you really want to be able to do? What is the
Ooh.
ultimate superpower?
Oh, Rachel. I mean, I think it would be it would be to be able to visually see things the way that I imagine that people like you see things. So like when we just did the thing with the angel, I could see the difference in snow. When I moved my hand through the space, I couldn't see the like the trails or anything. So I think that is because at first I was like, oh, definitely I want like to read people's minds. But then I was like, oh, I totally know how to do that already. Um, but it's more of that. But yeah, I think it would be to like be able to visually see what I like my dead relative standing in the corner or something.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just pause and say I am doing individual sessions of extrasensory development right now, and I'm also offering readings again. So
Which you guys, she hasn't done in like forever.
I've done a few recently because like I told you all on this live stream, people have been reaching out to me, and so I've been doing them, and it's been absolutely amazing because I love doing them, and it's so much fun for me. But yes, I'm offering readings again, and I will put the link to the readings in the chat right now because I even have an option where it's a lower cost and I'd make you a video of your reading and email it to you. So I also have like an hour one-on-one reading. But yeah, check it out if you're interested. Okay, back to your question. So you want to see like whole people, basically.
Yes.
Cool. So intention is everything, right? So knowing that you want to see that is great. Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a whole being? Have you ever seen a flash of a being like this?
I think that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I have a specific memory. I was thinking about this. I have a specific memory from childhood where I remember thinking that I saw someone in my room and then having the conversation with myself that there was actually no one there. And I've also, I think, probably seen things a lot of times where like you see it and then you look and you're like, oh, that was my mind playing tricks on me. So, yes.
Excellent. So you already know how to do it, right? I'm going to say more, but like, isn't that so good to know that you've already experienced what you want to experience? Like, of course you can do it, right? Now you just want to be able to do it on purpose.
Right.
Which is great. And also the point of our intuitive art, right? Talk to your intuition on purpose. So let's look back at that darkest place. So for everybody here, if you want to be able to see more and possibly whole beings, we want to practice looking at energy so that we can see more of it. So look at the darkest place. And now let's ask, who is safe? Do you have a safe loved one who you wouldn't mind seeing?
Well, I'm thinking of Richard, my neighbor, would be a good one. He's safe.
Perfect. All right. So if anybody's at home, if you want to try this out, You can think of a safe loved one that you'd want to see, or a spirit guide, or something that wouldn't freak you out too much. Not saying you're going to be able to see it right now, but this is how I would go about practicing. So look at that darkest spot, or that corner. The corner is probably best because there's a bigger field of view. And now ask that person, okay, hey, Richard, would you mind showing up for me? I would really love to see you right now. And more than likely, you're going to see a shape more than the colors and the outlines. You're probably going to see someone scrunched up in the corner, maybe in a like sitting position, or in like a little bit of a ball because we're asking them to show up in a corner. Maybe they will be hovering there. Maybe you'll see a flash of a memory with them. Maybe you'll see an older version of them, or younger, actually, you know what I mean, a younger version of them for a second. Whatever happens, like right now I'm looking and I'm seeing a big like shape. It's just a big shape, and it's just a little bit more dense, the surrounding areas. It's not opaque in any way whatsoever. It's just more white, more active than the other area. But that's how you practice. So keep doing that, and you're going to train your brain to be able to allow you to see more, because your brain is the thing that interprets all of this, right? It's putting the picture together for you. And so the more relaxed you get, the more blasé this kind of becomes, the easier it'll be to see more detail.
Okay. So I immediately, when I looked in the corner, I was looking, the corner that I'm looking in, there's like a little end table there with a kind of a tall plant on top of it. I was looking above that in the corner of the room. But when you said, like, Richard, would you mind showing up? Like the whole corner got like denser and darker. And then I could see, the best way for me to describe it is like, do you remember the old Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls video where the water people danced?
Oh, I don't know if I remember the water people.
Well, it's like,
Oh, wait, no, I do.
okay, it's sort of like that, like the clear, it wasn't the snow energy. I can still see it. But it was like, I'm not gonna say it was like a water person because it wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't moving around like this, but there's a visual difference, almost like I need to blink my eyes or like clear something, right? That is there, only my eyes are fine. So that's really cool.
Yes.
Follow-up question. I feel like our viewers maybe are like a little more into this, but like, how do I know that that's real and
Mhm.
not my brain just deciding like, oh, you want to see Richard? Here you go.
Well, that's why this broader view of how the world works is so important, because when you are not embodied, there is no limitation for you, right? So Richard wasn't at a meeting and he wasn't able to come. Like, he's an energy being and he can be in a million places at once if he wants to. So he has the ability to show up whenever you intend. And for all of you here, and you're familiar with Intimate Alien, this is what she talks about. It's all about intention and synchronicity. Synchronicity is the calendar. So it's almost like this was on Richard's calendar to be here because your intention made it so. So I have struggled with, well, I've never struggled with this, but I've always been a very practical person. I've always been surrounded by very practical people. And I've questioned this. Like, what if I had a brain tumor all my life? What if none of this is real? But if it makes you feel good, then does it really matter? And if you're not hurting anyone, does it really matter? I mean, obviously, I believe that my life experience is real because this is how I experience life. And there are millions of other people who experience life like this. If you've had premonitions or knowings that have come true, you know there's no possible way that this is fake because the exact same thing that I thought happened very soon after. So it's just like learning to trust your intuition. It's just a little bit of a different skill set. Like, I can show myself that this is true because of this, this, and this. And then your mind adapts and relaxes.
I think what you said, for me, trusting it became, because I would be like, how do I know it's real? Am I just making this up? Like over and over, am I just making this up? Is this just wishful thinking? Like so many times I would ask that. But enough times what I was making up happened
Mm-hmm.
that it was like, okay, maybe I'm not just making it up. Maybe I have these, maybe I'm able to extrasensory perception, right? Maybe I'm tapping into that. I wanted to go back, if you're ready. I wanted to go back to what Gina Maria said. She said her superpower, if she could pick one, would be timeline predictions.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean to you?
So for me, that means like what we think of as classically psychic, like predicting the future. But she's saying it a little bit more eloquently because, as we all know, the future is pretty unlimited. There are infinite timelines that we can sync up with. So maybe she's saying, like, I would like to, I mean, the way I say it is like tap into the most um likely future, you
Yeah.
know, or tap into the timeline that she wants to tap into, etc. So um, that's totally doable and not harder than anything else. So um, this might be best if you're judging yourself, you can always have like an escort. This is how my first spiritual mentor had me go to the Akashic records. You don't need this, it's an extra step. It's more of a ritual to make you feel safe. Um, it's not needed, but if you close your eyes and like ask your angel friends, your spirit guide, anyone that you would consider like a being that would be like a safe guide for you, ask them to escort you to view the timeline that you want to view. And you can go to the Akashic records because, you know, that's like where all the info is stored. You can go to source. You can just ask generally without a destination. So whatever it is you want to know, just ask for it. Gianna Maria is clarifying and she says, I always want to know when X will happen. Then ask when X will happen. I always found timing and not just a timeline to be more challenging. I'm pretty okay at it, but timing, it's so funny. So this is what made me not be a psychic anymore is it's up to us. It's up to the part of us focused here when the timing happens because we're the ones that have the resistance. The timeline doesn't have the resistance. We have the resistance. So if we want to know when something's going to happen, what's better to know is how can I line up with it? How can I line up with this timeline that I want is really the more powerful question because then the timing is irrelevant. So that's just, see, that's why I became a coach and not just a psychic, though in my coaching, I always use all of my psychic skills as well. So,
Well, one of the things that you said to me years ago that really helped with this is, I don't know what I was saying, but you were like, well, so let's just jump timelines. Like, and I was like, what? I was probably doing the same thing. When will this happen? Like waiting. Here we are talking about waiting, right? Like wishing, hoping, wanting. Like if I just, and you know, I remember this was actually helpful. Like I've heard lots of times, what would you do if you weren't afraid? But like I didn't really know. But it was like, what would you do if you knew with 100% certainty that this was inevitable? So I'm thinking about some like cheesy 80s movies. I wish I could think of the names right now, but like where they sort of played with the idea of this. Peggy Sue Got Married is kind of an example, but not really. Anyways, this idea of like or Back to the Future, when you know something is going to happen. Like, how would you live your life? So for me, it's like, how would I live my life if I knew that on March 24th, 2023, I would win $302 million in the lottery, right? Like, I would live if I had that date 10 years ago. How would I have lived these last 10 years? And that was really helpful for me in recognizing, like, oh, if I just lived from this place of like, it it is, I would live differently than how I'm living now. And so if I'm going to jump timelines, all that means is living now as if it was. And that was super duper helpful. So, and really accelerated some timelines in my life despite
Exactly.
my resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're never going to completely get rid of resistance, but this is an inside out universe, right? This is a vibrational, attractive universe. And so if we want something to happen, we have to be it happening, right? So, yeah. Oh
There
my
you go.
gosh, you guys, I could nerd out about this for hours and weeks and days and years. This has been so much fun. And a lot of you are here live. So if you want us to do a part two, let us know. If you have other skills that you want help developing, let us know. If you want to book a private session with me, we could do this one-on-one. Just go to rachelarchelaus.com and services. You'll see extrasensory coaching. And we do cover it in our group as well. We have many courses in our groups for psychic development. So yeah, exciting. So how do you want to close this out, Carrie?
Well, I do think that when many people think about psychics, they do think about like being able to predict the future.
Mhm.
And I remember one of the very first psychics that I worked with, who is wonderful and lovely and amazing. When I had first started working with her, she like was preparing. She had been preparing to move. I think her parents were sick, and she was moving from Laguna Beach to Texas, and to be closer to her family. And in the move, her husband left her. Like, he was like, "No, you're moving. I'm not moving." And I was like, "How did you not see that coming? Like, you're psychic. How did you not see that coming?" And sorry for the yawn. Just wanted to say she's incredible and she's amazing and she's human. And so you can be psychic and human at the same time and have your own resistance and your own blind spots and need support and other people in your life and realm. You have access to everything, and you have some really good defense mechanisms set up as well. So that's we have this group available to you guys so that you'll be surrounded by other amazing creatures who will support you on your journey. Um, she did have a great attitude about it, and life has worked out perfectly for her. But she had a great sense of humor about it, actually. But I just thought that was a funny story about psychics. Like, yes, psychics can see the future and they can be totally blind to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how many of you know Sonia Choquette, but she's written like 20 books for Hay House. She's been around a long time. And she got divorced from her husband maybe like 8 years ago, something like that. And people were really mad at her. Like, how could you have been in this relationship? How could you, how could you be human? How could you be flawed like the rest of us, even though divorce doesn't make you flawed? But yeah, like exactly what you're saying. We're all doing the journey on our own trajectory. We're here for different reasons. And there's no such thing as perfection. We're all doing our own thing. So if you ever have that worry, like you need to be perfect in order to do something, well, being psychic will help you definitely not feel perfect because it's so subtle. It's so subtle. It's not like all of a sudden some, weird clown thing is going to jump into your room and like be in full color and noise. Like it's not. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. So it makes you slow down and really be in the moment and more perceptive. And so these things are less likely to happen to you. You're less likely to be thrown off completely in your life because you'll notice things before they actually come to a huge crescendo. But if that happens to you, then you're not doing anything wrong. You're just human. Or you planned it that way. We also do that. We throw things in our path so that we have an opportunity to grow even before we come into this body. So there's no wrong that you're doing if life is hard on occasion or all the time.
What it has done for me, I see we're almost out of time, is it has helped me to be like certain in the uncertainty. It has helped me like relax and trust in the unknown because I have enough of a subtle knowing,
Mhm.
that subtlety that you're talking about. Like, I don't have the Back to the Future, like, you know, I'm thinking about how he like, didn't they like buy a, like uh, he went into the future and bought like 20 years worth of horse races or something like I don't have the book of everything, right? Where I can like point to the date and know, but so many things have happened in my life as I have chosen to live more this way that in the midst of like the seeming chaos or like the uncontrollable or whatever, I've just been a little bit more relaxed because I have a knowing of how it's all going to turn out. And then when it all does turn out, I never could have seen this path, but I knew it. I knew it. And that's really fun.
Mhm. Yes.
The
Cool.
Almanac of Sports History. Thank you, Guillaume. Back to the Future too. I should have known I could count on Guillaume for that.
Yes. All right. Well, that's it for today. Oh my goodness. So what are we taking away from today? Build on the skills that you want to learn because they will expand over time, and that you're already psychic. You've probably already done the things you want to do. It was just unintentional, so you feel a little disconnected from it. No big deal. So if you want anything like this again, let us know. And we hope you had a great, fun time. Next week, Carrie will not be here. Our friend and fellow BFF, Courtney Long, will be here. And we'll have another conversation that's pretty fun. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Carrie, for adding all your stories and your amazing conversational skills.
Well, thanks.
And we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.